Hello, my name is David Fielder. I'm an actor and here to represent a talk given by Eugene Halliday at Parklands in the northwest of England in 1983. It is entitled Applying What We Know and will be in two parts of half an hour each. Applying What We Know, Part 1. I've been asked particularly about how to apply what we know. Because the funny thing about human beings is that they have been collecting information for thousands of years about correct behaviour to each other, but they have not yet begun to apply that to any considerable degree. In fact, a bishop in London said a few years ago, after 2,000 years of Christian exaltation, precisely no effect is observable. So I was asked, why do we not apply what we know? We all know that we are related together, human beings, that we have the same origin, and yet we have a Beirut, we have African quarrels, we have European quarrels, we have Russia, China, America, Britain, all the other countries busy fighting each other for some kind of material advantage, as if they're not going to leave it. Now, apart from one or two mystical cases, some of which are mentioned in the Bible, all the people who have come on earth have died. To the born, certain is death, said Buddha. Well, we are at different distances from that death, most of us by age, but not necessarily by car accidents. Every year, millions of people are killed by accidents, by wars, by diseases, by starvation, and so on. But why have we not yet learned the lesson when we know the lesson already? This is the subject matter we're going to discuss tonight. It's fundamentally very, very simple and practically the most difficult thing there is in the universe. Why it is difficult is to do with what we call inertia. Now, inertia is the tendency of a thing, once stationary or moving, to remain in that condition unless acted upon by some external force that will change it. The physical definition of inertia is the tendency of a thing or a body to continue either at rest or in motion unless acted upon by some other force. Now, this is the big enemy, inertia. The tendency to do what we are doing, either sitting still or moving. The same thing applies at all levels. Physically, there is inertia of the body. Now, if you run fast up to a wall and then decide to stop 2 inches from it, you don't. Emotionally, there is inertia. You have emotional attitudes of love or hate or indifference towards objects and people and other creatures. Mentationally, you have thoughts all running along, habitual thoughts, daily thoughts, the same old thoughts day in, day out, week in, week out, every year, thinking roughly the same things about the same things. So, the 3 lower ones, the body, the emotions, and the mentations, are very, very inert. And now we come to the question of the concept. The concept has to do with eternal truths. That also has an inertia, but the inertia of an eternal truth is quite different from the inertia of mentation. Now, the inertia of mentation, temporal, time sequence thinking, is nothing but a habit acquired in time. You think in a certain way because you were brought up in a certain type of society. Human beings condition each other as children, and they condition each other in their social relation, and this mentational inertia is an external acquired habit. A habit of disliking people who are of a different denomination in the same religion, or a different religion. Now, we have Jews and Christians and Muslims and Hindus, Shintos, all kinds of beings, simply because they were externally conditioned as children to recite certain ideas as beliefs. Those are established. It's like learning to drive a car. Where is the clutch? Where is the brake? Then after a time, your foot, your hand automatically go to these things. And so it is with mentational process. You acquire ideas like, are you a Catholic? Are you a Protestant? Are you for Free Ireland? Or are you for Ireland bound with Britain? And so on. These are all inertias, acquired by education from outside. They are mentational. The other kind of inertia, the conceptual inertia, has to do with elementary propositions, like a triangle has 3 sides forever, and a square has 4, and a pentacle has 5, and so on. Now, this type of inertia of a conceptual order is totally different from the inertia of the mentational order. In conceptual inertia, what we have is the inertia of eternal truth. The things that are equal to another thing are equal to each other. In that respect, all external truths are inertias. And inertia means in work affirming. The E-R-T, means work in ertia. There is work in cosmos, and that cosmic work is what we call truth, as to its formal aspect. The formal shape of things that are always invariably the same shape and always will be. Squares will have 4 sides, triangles 3 sides. Those will remain eternally what they are. Those are conceptual inertias. They are inertias in the mind of the absolute. So we must distinguish between those. Now, when we come to volition, symbolized by the thumb, when we come to volition, volition fundamentally is initiative. Now, initiative has no inertia whatever. If you say that I tend to will the same thing in the same circumstances, that is not a true use of the word will. When you initiate, there is no inertia. Where there is inertia, you have fallen into identification, either with the eternal concept of truth or a mentational trained reaction given to you by parents and educators, or by an emotional attitude, or by sheer physical habitual tendency. Now, we all know that these things are true, that we have inertia, but very, very seldom do we actually stand still and then use initiative. Initiative has no inertia. Initiative is free and always now. Nowness is an essential quality of initiative. The problem is, how do we get to initiative if we have fallen into a state of inertia? Well, you all know that most of the major religions have a story about the fall, and the fall is quite a simple proposition. It consists in this, that a free intelligence fabricates a form and then identifies itself with the form and forgets that it made the form. You all know the story of a Greek sculptor who made a very beautiful statue of a woman and then fell in love with it. He forgot that he had made it. In the same way, human beings, individuals, design for themselves a self-image, like Quentin Crisp, and they make this self-image their life pattern. They identify with it, and they then live that patterned life as if they were that pattern. They forget, I have created the pattern by my will. So the question put to me was, how are we going to remember every day to reposit ourselves that we are not the slaves of inertia, but that we are spirits of initiative, that we have the power to change immediately at any point of time our decision? We don't have to be overridden by education or by emotional attitudes. Now, the how begins with an H. The others, like what, where, when, why, who, begin with a W. But the how begins with an H. You all know that H is the 8th letter of the alphabet and signifies hierarchy of powers. That means to understand how, you must understand the hierarchy of powers. And in our being, we have an hierarchy. We think, we feel, we will, we coordinate, we embody. And these are arranged in a hierarchy. If we don't gather ourselves together, then we cannot control ourselves. We are masses of energy. Our body is energy. Our emotions are energy. Our mentations are energy. Our concepts are energy. Our volition is the immediate energy of initiative. It is all energy. But energy arranges itself in a hierarchy. The moment you get a point of initiative, a sequence follows. That was very easily illustrated when we were away. A friend of mine was feeding some seagulls. She threw some bread and it fell onto the sand, and the seagulls immediately perceived it, came down and started gobbling it up. But a few feet below us there was a ledge, and some of the bread fell on that ledge. But the seagulls, seeing the bread falling on the sand, thought, bread is on the sand. So they all flew down there, and they were all eating the bread on the sand. When the sand bread had gone, they looked disconsolate. No more bread. But the hierarchy of intelligence and power and initiative in two individuals is equal. Forgive me. In no two individuals is equal. And at one point, I shouted to the seagulls, "Up here! Up here!" And one seagull looked up, and he flew up onto the ledge and found the other bread. He was the first one to notice that this signal meant bread on the ledge. He came up and started eating, and immediately the others saw him. He'd gone. He'd gone and eaten all the food. Gull means appetite. Gullibility means exposure to internal appetites. So they all followed the first one. And in the history of the human race, there's always been somebody who saw where the bread was on the ledge and had gone up to get it. And in history, they're called great men. They're only great, observe the word eat in great, because they saw something to eat which the others had not noticed. So, in order to begin to apply what we know, we have to recognize a hierarchy of powers in ourselves and say, top of the list, will. Next, the concept. Next, the temporal mentational process. Next, the emotional response. And then the body. There is a hierarchy. If you forget the others and think only of the body, you react like a physical being, and physical beings collect physical beings. There is the body, and there is spirit animating that body. And one day, for whatever reason, the spirit departs, and there is a body. As soon as there is a body there, then body men come and start arranging the funeral. When the body is there will be somebody dealing with the body who has concentrated on that occupation of dealing with bodies. Some other beings deal in trying to make bodies not die, in trying to make bodies healthy, and so on. But all the time, when you're dealing with a physical body from which spirit has totally departed, you are dealing with an inert mass that will not cooperate. But the moment the being is alive or feels, it will respond to some kind of helpful act. Now, the rule of the macrocosm-microcosm as correspondence is the macrocosm, that is the big cosmos, the big universe, and the little universe, man, are exactly internally matched point for point. So that whatever rule we find in the external universe, we can find the same rule inside ourselves internally. Our body is a little universe, and it has in it a solar plexus, like the solar system has the sun. And around it, like planets, go chemicals in a circulatory system. To get this hierarchy, we must get, first of all, a concept that there is a hierarchy and that the power of initiative is a real power that, I can choose to bend a finger or not. Now, if I can bend my finger, I can wrinkle my nose, I can wiggle my toes, I can wiggle anything I've got with practice. Like these two wiggling fingers, I can wiggle anything, whatever. And this is most important to realize. If we could move any part of ourselves by further practice, we can move every part of ourselves. We can move not only the body by muscular contraction, we can move and change emotional attitudes. We can move and change mentational judgments of times and events. We can move concepts which are eternal. But we cannot change those. We cannot change the definition of a square and a triangle. They are called eternal truths because we cannot change these. So when Plato is talking about the noumenal world, the world of these conceptual forms, he says this is an unchangeable world. And the time world is a world that changes. Because in time, you can get a triangle and a saw and saw out one side of the triangle and bend the others together and make two pieces. Or you can get a square and saw a piece out of that and make a triangle. You can get any number of any things that exist materially and change them, but the ideas do not change. They are eternal truths which cannot change. Now, we have all been taught these truths in the major religions of the world, and we have not liked to be taught these truths, in part of our being, because these truths are factually restraints upon our activities. When you were a child and you were told funny things like, be good, don't be bad, you didn't like that teaching because it imposed on your fundamental spontaneous action, and therefore you set up a guard when you're quite a little baby against truth, which conditions action if you are identified with it. So there is a war inside the human being. We have heard truths, we have nodded our heads at the truth formally, but we have not agreed to obey that truth where it impedes our own action and desire. Well, we are talking about how to apply what we know. So we have to look at the physical things we do as the most obvious things and ask ourselves daily, have we got a physical habit that we can change? And if we can, redesign that habit. Make another habit just for the practice and the proof that habits in the time world can be changed. We then ask ourselves, if we can change the definition of a triangle not to mean a three-sided figure? The answer is no. You cannot take a concept and spin it in time. You cannot take a piece of wood, make a triangle, and spin the wood in time, and you wear the corners off, and it will become a circle, if it is existential material. But not a concept. When you spin a concept in your mind, what are you actually doing? You're imagining different positions of a non-existential pattern. Now, it's so very, very easy to confound the mentational level, which has to do with time and matter, with the eternal formal factors, which are unchangeable. Because at one moment we're thinking about time. Oh, I have an appointment. I've got to see so-and-so. He is my friend. I will go and see him. And then the principle comes, but it's raining. I haven't got my hat with me. Should I go out in the rain to see him? Well, he is my friend. And that's a concept. Am I going to get wet for the sake of the concept? Or am I going to readjust myself for the sake of keeping dry? Now, the failure of people with religious beliefs to apply their beliefs has been the clash between temporal mentation and eternal verity. We know what eternal verity is. In principle, we're all nice people when we're not annoyed. And we're all brothers under the skin, aren't we? Negroes have the same number of chromosomes as white people. They can crossbreed. But mentationally, some people, say the Afrikaans people in general, have been taught that these people are not breedable. And have they not? They made a hate apart, an apartheid. But that is a temporal invention of convenience, denying the validity of an eternal truth. Now, we are talking again, and we have to remind ourselves continuously what we're talking about. And we have to do this every day and all day. Some people do what they call take a meditation course. They go to a meditation class and they learn a mantra, and they are told, say this for 1/4 of an hour a day and the rest of the time talk drivel. It's true. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. 1/4 of an hour will save your soul. It won't. It will give you a concept that you are saving your soul. Krishnamurti said for 50 years he had been lecturing people. There are no spiritual teachers. Guru means spiritual teacher. There are none. Why do you keep coming? A voice from the audience said, to be reminded. It's too bad, quite wrong, to be reminded. Because every day mentation attacks us and destroys the memory of our reality. Now, we've said this reality, fundamentally, is very, very simple. In a mantra like Rama, Rama, the meaning of Rama is very simple. Ra means discriminating activity, and Ma means appetival activity. Rama means both together. Now it is said that if you can recite the mantra Rama, you should swallow the M. You don't say Rama, you say Ram. Swallow the other one. You say Ra coming out and Ma coming in. Because the fundamental of Ma is appetite. Ma, more, M-A-W. When you say Ra, you are discriminative. When you say Ma, you are indiscriminative appetite. And if you become aware of that fact, you can know when you are conscious that you're an appetite and when you are not conscious that you are an appetite. And you are an appetite with no consciousness. And you will eat anything, like babies eat their own excrement and lumps of coal and other things. Now, I was once at the zoo with David and Zero, and there was a gorilla there. Wonderful things, gorillas. So spontaneous and natural. And a couple of these climbed up a tree. One excreted, looked at the nice, delectable piece, about that large, and proceeded to eat it. At that moment, Zero said, "Oh, I didn't know gorillas did that." And now their tendency to want to kiss gorillas vanished at that moment. The gorilla was not Ra, it was just Ma. If you said to that gorilla, "Are you aware that this is discarded material from the body called excrement and not edible?" If it had received the gift of speech at that moment, it would have said, "Don't talk rubbish. I can smell the unused protein that's got through, and I'm going to get the best out of it, if I can, before I finally give it up." How would you like to do the same? Now, we're still talking about how to apply what we know. We're all nice people, we're all blood brothers, we're all of one origin, and that origin is spirit, intelligent power. That's all we are. So we don't need to fight. We merely need to remember that we are all the same beings. Does the right hand fight the nose often? Not with most people. Chelyabinsk, a Russian singer, once knocked himself out for singing the top note flat. He had a good reason for that. Now, he was trying to teach his nervous system, by aversion therapy, not to sing flat. Now, we have to fight. It is called the good fight. To fight, to remember that we are already absolute. There is no question here of having to realize one's relation with the absolute. The relation of yourself with the absolute is self-relation. You are the absolute disguised. How do you feel if you believe that's true? We are all modalities of infinite sentient power. That's what we are. But if we are, does our behavior coincide with it? Why not? Because we forget. We forget our absoluteness because we get caught in mentation. Why do we get caught in that? Because of pleasures and pains. Why do we get those? Because we've got focused on a body. And how are we going to remember? Now, we have things called symbols. The word symbol is symbol, seed, will. The seed of will. Every symbol is a seed of a will. That means it can grow and become free volition. If you think about it, S-Y-M, reverse it, M-Y-S. That's the other mystery. Because in the seed, in the sim, there is a mystery. You can't see an oak tree in an acorn, can you? No. Well, I was sitting one August in a garden in the country and flying about with seeds all over the place. You could not see what they would become, and some pods were turning inside out and throwing themselves about, and they were cracking. It was very hot. And each one potentially could become a tall plant and make flowers and throw them about. But you could not see that in the seeds. And when you get hold of a seed and take it to pieces with a little knife, looking for the mysterious flower, it is not there. No amount of cutting of seeds or human brains will disclose the secret, the mystery of the sim, of the seed. There is a will hidden in every seed. Now, once upon a time, long, long ago, there was none of what we call organized language, as we know it. That is, language made workable between people and within the individual for self-analysis. There was none. You simply grunted. You met another fella going through the forest. Now, it is very difficult to produce a metaphysical proposition like that. But there is an urge, an appetival urge, to create ever more and more efficiency. This concludes the first section of applying what we know. Thank you for listening.